we're going to start with updates in Russia, Ukraine. But so no one accuses us of bias. They're going to do it anyhow. It doesn't matter. I was on Twitter earlier before the stream doing my homework. I want to stop share screen. I want to bring something up from Human Rights Watch, which I think people should need to see. My only issue is I don't know enough about Human Rights Watch as an entity. And I'm not going to read a lot of the words. I'm just going to show you what they're reporting. Ukraine, apparent war crimes in Russia-controlled areas. You have some examples of the alleged war crimes. And you have, if you read the article, and I'll put it in the chat, you have testimonial evidence, I don't want to call it anecdotes, seems a little not sufficiently serious. You have testimony of what people are witnessing in Russia-controlled areas in Ukraine. The question is this. I have no doubt at all that soldiers in every war commit atrocities, and this would be no exception. For me to think that the Russian soldiers are not committing atrocities would be a double standard that I don't even hold for Canadian military forces. There are always bad apples. People do terrible things. So it's not even a question of saying, but maybe, I have no doubt it's happening. The question is this. What is Human Rights Watch record? Are they reporting on the video evidence on both sides, or are they doing what many people accuse you and I of doing, which is focusing on one side, which happens to be the side that less people are speaking about?
So Human Rights Watch is a Western-oriented group. So if they report on something that's opposed to the West, then it's something to pay attention to. Otherwise, that they tend to be that's the side they tend to be on. The same with Amnesty International. I mean, both of them at one time had a reputation as being more independent than they've been in the last 10 plus years or so. So that's where it is. I mean, basically, I've told people how to look for a false flag event, which is what I'm fairly confident this is what this is in this Kiev suburb. So the first thing is, does it involve caricaturing in sort of a grotesque, comical, cartoonish way a country, nation, population? So think back to the World War I propaganda, where you have a big German ape trying to grab a young woman of liberty, that kind of thing. The second aspect is, does it try to provoke an emotive response? In other words, is it a geopolitical analysis or something else, or is it intended to get you emotionally inflamed and enraged? And then third, does the wrong party profit? In other words, is it the accused who profits from it, or is it the purported victim who is going to politically profit from the event? And if you apply those three filters, you can really smoke out what is a likely false flag event from otherwise tragedies of war and whatnot. Now, so all three applied here right away. As soon as I saw the imagery, I was like, I'm skeptical immediately. Then you put in the second part into broader context. Before we get into the individual aspects of this story, the broader context is, for all of these accusations of Russians targeting civilians, if the Russians didn't care about civilians, they would be mass bombing the cities. If they didn't care about civilians, they would not defer to the Ukrainian army using civilians as shields, which they're doing in Mariupol and elsewhere. If they didn't care about civilians, they wouldn't be establishing humanitarian corridors for escape, and they wouldn't be establishing humanitarian aid in the areas that they occupy, all of which they have done. So the context doesn't really suggest that the accusations are true. Then you get to the specifics of the accusations themselves. And here there was a problem with timeline and a problem with imagery. So this area that Russia occupied for a relatively brief period of time, and primarily for short-term military purposes to the west of Kiev, they had full communications the whole time. The local residents did. Nobody was reporting any of this. Nobody was claiming any of this. Problem number one. Problem number two, when the Ukrainians took over the town, which happened almost a week ago, again, no reporting of any atrocities. No reporting of any civilian Russian military going door to door, asking conscriptable adults to come out, tying them down, and then shooting them. The third problem was this had the hallmark of being staged right away. So we're supposed to believe that the Russians went door to door, tied people up, shot them, and then left them in the middle of the street when they left. I mean, you really kind of have to be a sucker to buy into this story. This story screamed false flag. Of course, because the other part of the story, which came out because members of the Azov Battalion can't help but film their atrocities, is that members of the Azov Battalion came into this community a few days after it was cleared, and they put up on their own social media feeds that they were going to be, that they had been authorized to kill people that were not wearing the blue armband. For those that don't know, people in Ukraine, they're asked to wear a blue armband to signify their support of Ukraine. A white armband is what they're wearing if they're supporting Russia. What people started noticing was that a good number of these people, that none of them appeared to have a blue armband on, and that many of them had a white armband on. So this led the crowdsourcing started to expose all the different problems with the staging of the photographs, with the fact that white armbands were there, the problems with the timeline and chronology. Russia has now demanded that the United Nations Security Council authorize an independent investigation, a third-party investigation, because they believe the Azov Battalion went in there and targeted Russia, people who were considered citizens supportive or sympathetic to Russia. And that they went and summarily executed them and then did this staged event to get the Western media to pretend that it was some Russian atrocity.
Can I ask I mean, it's an ignorant, naive question almost, but if you know that the Azov Battalion is looking for Russia supporters and the Russians in theory are looking for Ukrainian supporters, why would anyone pick? Is the crime or is the punishment for not wearing a band the same as the punishment for wearing the wrong band? I mean, who's going to wear a white band knowing that the Azov Battalion is coming through?
It's not clear they knew the Azov Battalion was coming through. In other words, the Russians left, and a few days later, the Azov Battalion showed up, but that was only being publicized by Azov Battalion members on their Telegram and other social media pages. So that, in fact, there's criticism within Russia that they should have done something more to protect the population or make it clear that they had fully withdrawn. Because the Russians they announced they were going to withdraw, but it was kind of quick. It happened within 24 hours that they've basically pulled back from the entire west side of the river. But what we will know what the West really knows by whether or not they join the effort for a third-party independent UN investigation. In Syria and both chemical weapons attacks, the U.S. was the one to slow walk an independent investigation, demanded military action take place before that investigation could draw its conclusions. And from the very good work done by Aaron Mate, comes from the anti-war left perspective. He detailed how whistleblowers within that had disclosed that, in fact, Syria was not responsible for that chemical weapons attack that led Trump to bomb an empty airfield because his daughter Ivanka was crying from reading the Instagram photos. So we'll see how that will tell us a lot. If the U.S. quickly embraces the Russian request for an independent third-party UN investigation into that region, then we'll find out what the independent investigation reveals, and we'll find out who's telling the truth. If they slow walk it, then they know it's not what the media is pretending it is in the West.
But Robert, now I'm gonna say this now. I mean, I don't trust the UN as far as I can throw them. So whichever side I'm on, I don't care to see a UN investigation with, I don't know, Syria and China on the Human Rights Council. So how do you respond to that? If I'm the US, one way or the other. If I'm Israel, one way or the other. And if I'm Russia, one way or the other. I don't want the corrupt UN institution as an independent third party because I don't trust them either. So I could understand.
It's the only internationally recognized third-party institution for these kind of investigations. And while they have not often lived up to their capabilities, they are still the most able to provide this kind of independent review that all parties would be satisfactory with. I mean, that they ultimately did an independent review of what took place in Syria, and their whistleblowers reported what happened. Now, there were people at the top politically that tried to suppress that information, but it's still more useful than no investigation, in my view, because otherwise that would be the outcome. So yeah, it's a classic false flag event. And people wonder, I mean, the reason why they're going to keep pushing and propagating this is because false flags work. They've done about 25 now. It's almost a daily basis in Ukraine. But Gulf of Tonkin worked. Only one congressman, a populist from Eastern Kentucky, voted against it. The incubator baby story worked. The weapons of mass destruction story worked. The Remember the Maine worked. The sinking of the Lusitania worked. They're going to keep doing it because it works so well.
The idea here, Robert, is that not that these killings are not occurring, but rather that it's disputable, or it will be disputed as to who's doing them. I mean, I just say that I read the Human Rights Watch article. I read it, and it's not that I don't trust one side or the other. I don't trust anybody. Robert, don't take it personally. I trust but verify you. I should say that. I do trust but verify you because you have not led me astray with outright falsehoods at any point. I may disagree with your opinion, but that would still be opinion versus not being provided false facts. And if anybody says that you have provided those or me, let us know specifically and we'll respond. I read the article and I say, okay, fine. I'm reading it. I'm reading testimonials. I'm reading testimonials recounted by people on scene. Fine. Then I compare this and I go and I say, I saw those videos, Robert, of what occurred seemingly by Ukrainian forces. I see the video. I still don't even trust that video because I don't know. I don't know the language.
BBC has confirmed it as authentic, and they have no incentive to do so given which side they're on in the war.
Okay.
So there we've had independent Western confirmation or corroboration. Now, Zelensky was asked that by Brett Baier. Credit to Brett for asking the question, but Fox News then scrubbed his answer from their publication of the interview, where he was asked about the Azov battalion, and Zelensky said, they are who they are. And so, I mean, that kind of sums it up. I mean, basically, all the incentives right now are stacked for these kind of events, for a false flag event, are stacked on the Ukrainian side. That the military conflict is not going contrary to their imagination. I mean, the people that live in the little bubbles that believe every atrocity is a Russian atrocity and don't believe any of the Ukrainian atrocities, they also were telling me that Kiev was getting mass bombed by the Russians. I was like, Kiev would be rubble if it was being mass bombed by the Russians. They believe ridiculous things and ludicrous things. But outside of that little bubble world pretending they're winning, Ukrainian defense minister admitted the other day that their support mechanism for the armed industry is gone. It's all been taken out by the Russians. That they've lost a major part. They've lost enough land to equal the size of the United Kingdom.